healthcare management. And now what I do is I manage a pharmacy. I also run two businesses, a cake business and a gifting business. So that's what I do on a day-to-day. Um, so in terms of transitions, I have had to navigate quite a few transitions over the last decade, really, or yeah, 10, 15 years. So I've done quite a couple of major career changes. Of course, also in the last 10 years, marriage, motherhood, but also recently I've navigated almost around the same time, actually, a loss and almost, I want to say career change, but it's a life change. I just kind of changed my life, as it were. And so, yeah, hopefully we have a good conversation.
Looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Situ. And lovely to be introduced to you properly. I'm not seeing any person in the chat saying hello. We're going to have a conversation today, so please feel free to be on there. I'd like to see a few messages. Amelia, over to you. Please introduce yourself and tell us a
Hi
little about your
everyone.
recent transitions.
Sure, definitely. Hi everyone. Hope you can hear me well. My name is Amelia Sanya Basharan. I am an information manager, which doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people, but I basically work in construction. Um, I'm also a part-time baker, I would say. I've only just gone back to baking after having a baby. I've transitioned from singlehood to marriage to motherhood. So yes, that's a bit about myself.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. And also, I know, like I mentioned, a lot of you have also had your own recent transition. So if you can put in the chat, I think the time frame to refer to is in the last 10 years, which, there's a few transitions you mentioned in there. I know, Amila, your time frame is probably shorter, but it's still also quite a few in that period. So I'd love to hear from everyone. What transitions have you navigated in the last 10 years? So I'm going to get into the questions first of all, right? And I'm going to start in an obvious place because this year, as we know, in Trinity Chapel, it's been a harvest of weddings, people transitioning from that single phase to married faces, right? And where it's such a happy time of celebration and build up, and this it's a big change still. There is such a build up to the wedding, and there's all this focus there, and then you're married, and then everyone minds their business, but you have to face your new reality. You're living with essentially this person in your house, and you guys are having to do life together. So, Millie, I want to start with you because it's probably fresher for you, right? How
Yeah.
was that transition from, you know, being single, free willy, and everything to now
Mm-hmm.
living with your husband, happily married, I believe, but obviously, navigating that change in status. How was that for you?
I think for me, I want to say that we were meant to get married in 2020, but COVID. So at the time, we had actually purchased a house, and no, it was the whole like moving in. Obviously, this was meant to be our marital home. Are we going to wait till has finished before we now start living together? So my dad, bless him, he was just like, let me just bless you and go and live your life. Like, this is the path that you have chosen. So for us, it didn't really start the way that we expected it to be. Like, we had this big 600 people wedding, and yeah, then COVID, and we were doing COVID together in the house. And I think for me, I didn't realize that, oh my gosh, I'm not actually going home. Like, this is my home. Like, like this is it. Like, yeah, like this is now my home. And now I had to, it took a while for me to realize that, oh my gosh, I'm not actually going back to my parents' house. And I think for Peter as well, he realized that basically every Sunday I will go home and I have dinner with my parents, really. It took a while for me to be like, this is my home. This, I have to build my home, as the Bible says. So I must admit, yes, it did take a while. And I think also because I'm also I want to say a mummy and daddy's girl. So that transitioning period, I would say, was a bit hard for me just to let go, if that makes sense. Like, So yeah, even now I'm really, really close with my parents and my sibling. But yes, I would say it's been a journey, and I feel like the journey is still ongoing, if that makes sense. So yeah, it was easy because my parents, I feel like them themselves, they were like, okay, you need to go, like you've left already, so be going. And then finally in 2021 we did have our big wedding, and I think then that's when it's set in, like, oh my gosh, I'm actually fully married now, so let's do married life for me. And that transitioning period, so I think I've asked my few friends, oh, have you changed your name? And they were like, oh no. And I was just like, you guys have been married for 5 years. I was like, how have you not changed your name? So for me, I have legally changed my name. And that, I think, for me, I think it had to happen because yeah, it just had to happen. My passport was already due for renewal. So I was just like, this is just the time. Like, I'm not going to wait another 10 years for me to change my name. So I have actually legally changed my name at the point of, or at the start of our marriage. So for me, I feel like that actually starts saying when you actually start seeing your name like just change on all the legal documents and things. So yeah, it has started to progress, and now we have a child. So I'm definitely inside the marriage.
You're fully invested. You've
Fully
accepted it.
invested.
Wow, it's so interesting because you talk about a lot of things, and I can also resonate with them, obviously, because I also got married in 2020, living through COVID. The name change piece, I must admit, I'm one of those your friends. I'm waiting for my passport to be renewed, but I think you're right. It probably does really help in fully accepting like your new identity, because you have a new identity. For us as women, obviously, we take on a new name, we take on a new family. I mean, both sides, you're taking on a new family, and there's also that side of accepting your in-laws as also your family and integrating with them. So there's so many layers to this, and I think the first thing you said is like realizing that actually it's now me, I have to build my home. So taking ownership of that as a transition phase for such a positive thing is I think that's a key element that you mentioned. And Tisu, I don't know if you can also relate with that, like, because I saw you nodding and smiling along as Amelia was sharing. Like, for you, how was that transition from single to married as well?
So I think for me it was slightly or rather I didn't find it that difficult, because when we first got married, my husband was working away, so he was coming at the weekend. So that was pretty chill.
It was you by
yourself. It wasn't cramping my style too much.
You were still dating.
And then he moved home. And then it all started, right? So by the time he moved back, and started working, leaving home every day for work, I was like, you are in my space. A bit too much. But yeah, I think the first year was the sort of settling in, trying to, this guy's doing things a bit different to what I would do it and things. But yeah, we navigated it. Thank God for adequate marriage preparation as well. So it wasn't too bad. But yeah, I do remember that I found it easy the first few months, because it's like, this guy comes home at the weekend, it's fine.
That's interesting. And I'm hoping a lot of people who are getting married, planning to be married, or have children, nieces that are going through this transition, can relate and take some learnings. I mean, you said good preparation obviously helps. I think that's definitely key. And we have obviously such a great program within Trinity Chapel helping our couples get ready for that. I think one thing you also mentioned, generally the first year of marriage, we know it's typically, they say it's like, the most challenging year, because obviously you're getting used to that new normal. For you, Amelia, right, soon after, you were also navigating another transition, which is having another person, like you said, you're now married and you have a child, right? So you also had to navigate that. So I don't know what
navigating.
Well, again, that's one of the questions. Like, how long does it take? Because again, with marriage, you said you're still navigating, and that was an interesting comment, right? Is there a fixed point in time where you're like, okay, 1 year in, I'm fully married, like I'm adjusted to everything? probably none. And like I said, maybe things like the in-laws, I don't know how that's probably a bit more finances, merging that, planning there's still always going to be that ongoing transition. But for you, adding on and getting to transition from single, happily married wife to now mom. So how has that transition been for you? And specifically, I mean, that's something that you build up to. What are things you did to prepare actively for that?
So I would say, in terms of obviously pregnancy and baby, I feel like in the process, obviously, doing a nursery, buying things, planning for this child, there's steps that people take, whether it's going to your appointments, is all a step that, oh my gosh, there's actually someone that's going to be living with us very soon. But I think one of the key things for me is learning on the job. So I would say that my transitioning has not fully yet completed, because even with marriage, that person is changing as much as I am changing every day. So I feel like there's always something to learn. There's always something to develop. There's always something new to aspire to, with me and my spouse, that is. And there's a saying that marriage is the only place where you get the certificate before the test, because there's so many tests coming along the way, but they've already given you the certificate to say that you've actually passed. So you actually have to work at it to actually keep passing that test every year, every month, every day, every hour, as you are with that person. Is actually the two of us that are actually doing it. So that's with marriage. Now with a child and navigating that is, for me, it's the child is alive, she's well, she's eating, she's breathing, and tomorrow will go again. And for me right now, where she is so young, where she's so young, I'm able to do things that she can't object to yet. So whether it's prayer in the morning or in the nighttime, or whether it's going to church, she right now can't say, oh no mom, I don't want to do these things. So for us, we're building a life together, and in that life there's loads of things that's just going to come at us, but there's certain principles that we've set in place that is actually helping me in terms of transitioning, because it's not easy. I mean, I went back to work when Jessica Joy was 4 months old, so I've also had to implement that into our schedules and our life. So yes, it's an ongoing process, but I feel like having the community around me that I do, I have friends who have had babies, people who know have had kids for like 20 years. So we're not alone in this game, I would say. So I believe that having a good support system, having a good network is really important around you for your transitioning period.
I love particularly two things you said about it's continuous every day, every year, every month, assessing how you are and where you want to get to. And I think that's a key thing in transitioning. One, we talked about accepting your new normal. And then two is like, what are the goals and aspirations that you have for this new stage that you're entering into? Then you talked about leaning on community, friends, and experienced people. And I think for whatever life stage we're dealing with, there's probably always that you can pull on. So I'm going to come to you, right? You are a seasoned mom of multiple children. So you've navigated not just 0 to 1, but 1 to 2, So tell us also about how you've managed that continuously, and how you've tried to optimize your life as your new status as a mom as you've grown.
So I think I'm going to speak generally for a minute. I think the thing with life transitions is they always come with a change in dynamics, whether or not you acknowledge them. And I guess it's worth just being conscious of that.
When you say changing dynamics, can you break it down?
So, for example, where we're talking about motherhood, your marriage changes, right? Your routine changes. There are certain things you can't just do anymore. It's what it is, but your dynamics have changed. Quite with children, that's quite significant as well. And that's true with every other kind of transition. Your dynamics do change. Again, like I said, whether you acknowledge it or not. And it's those is the dynamic change itself that makes it difficult. If that makes sense. The transition itself might be an event or might be a process. You might even have planned for that transition. But it's the dynamic change that makes it, the dynamics change that makes it quite challenging, if that makes sense. For me, the change in dynamics with becoming a mom of one at first was very, and I'll say one thing. I remember after having my daughter, I thought, hang on a minute, because I'm the sort of person that if I ask my husband to do something and he doesn't do it quickly, I'm like, I'll do it myself. And that just changed that. I thought to myself, I'm not going to go mad. I'm not going to. We're in this together, so you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to learn to do it. And my husband and I joke about it, and that was what started my journey of training my husband as well.
Wow.
To do certain things, because I just realized, this is not going to, your superwoman thing doesn't work here. Yeah. So I think that was one of the first things that happened with me. I had a lot of support. I remember having my mom stayed with me from the time the baby was born till about 6 weeks, 7 weeks. And the great thing was she did the 9 shifts. So if I'm being honest, I didn't have the hardest times with, not sleeping and all of that. And I recovered quickly, I guess, because I had that kind of help. So it wasn't too bad. Now, 1 to 2 was a completely different. I remember someone saying to me at the time when I had my daughter, this is the most unique pregnancy. You never have another pregnancy like this. You'll never have another time where you've just got one baby. 1 to 2 was a completely different ball game for me. One, because you then have, I had my son when my daughter was 2. So it's still pretty young, So you've got 2 children that are pretty young at different stages. And I cannot forget, I think one of the most, for me, the most traumatic memories that I have is potty training and breastfeeding at the same time.
Oh my God.
I cannot forget that every time I sat to breastfeed my son, my daughter needed the potty. And I remember it was, so yeah, that I found that particular change in dynamic much more challenging than the first. And then you come up with children with different personalities as well and different abilities in life as well. And so those things, like Amelia said, having a community was very helpful. I had friends that we had children at the same time. We had this group of 2017 babies when I had my daughter. And so it was really, sometimes it was just, this child is pooing again, but it was good. And I'm the sort of person, I do a lot of research anyway. So I would always do research. If I found something, I would call up my friends and say, I saw this, can we, you might want to try this. So the community thing was very helpful. And like you said, I mean, that applies to every other kind of, almost all transitions. There's something about finding your tribe that makes it all the more easy, that makes it easier, because you're not meant to do life alone. It just doesn't work. But yeah, that was I'm still transitioning, trust me.
We all are.
Yeah.
They're very different children at every stage. Again, the challenges are different. They start to develop their own personalities, and you're trying to think, okay, how do I not damage these children? How do I bring them up in the way of the Lord? How do I so yeah.
Yeah, and I can find people in the chat. So I can see some comments. It says, wife to mother is a significant change.
Yeah.
And thumbs up at finding your tribe. I think, yes, those are definitely key things that you need. And so you're not scaring me, or I'm trying not to be. You're like, transition from 1 to 2, and I'm about to start my own, transition from
I'm
that
here now,
like,
so,
yes, exactly.
We made
you're
it.
there. So you're my tribe. I'm going to be leaning on you for that resource. So these are quite positive transitions we've talked about, right? Marriage, motherhood, they're things that people, proactively seek and go after. I actually do also want to just swing it because, you can see that these are natural things that happen, but there's some transitions that need a bit of force. So before we even go into negative, they require a bit of force. And so we're talking again, I want to translate this back to our theme this month about breaking out. And so my question is to both of you about, are there transitions that you've had to, they obviously they come with challenges, but you've had to kind of force yourself to go into them. Again, maybe this could be work related. Maybe it could be, with going back to work so early, right? That's something that required a new, with a 4-month-old, whatever the case may be, stepping up to a new level, and having to develop yourself in certain ways to make sure that you attain this new level. Have you had experience of proactively pushing yourself against the tide of the status quo where you're all comfortable and you're like, actually, no, this is something I need to do? What was the time that you stepped out of your comfort zone, and what's that transition? Do you have anything that comes to mind?
Titi, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I think it was my first career change, my first major career change. So here I was practicing dentistry back home in Nigeria. And so it was the norm if people wanted to leave either medicine, dentistry, or those health-related fields, and wanted to come and do a master's abroad, you will do public health. You will do this. That generally was it. So when I told people I was coming to the UK, they just assumed I was coming to do public health. But I'd made up my mind I was actually changing my career, right? So a lot of people were shocked when I said I was going into business, going to do it was health management, but I was going to business school. I just wanted to completely move out of clinical practice. And that did not sit well with a lot of my lecturers, and we're just wondering, what's this girl doing with her life? You would be such a brilliant dentist. What are you doing? My parents were a bit less dramatic, but they were still like, send this girl to school to go, but yeah, and the interesting thing is, it was quite major for me because I loved being a dentist. So moving completely out of clinical practice was it was a big decision. I don't want to say it was a big decision, but at the time I was young, very single, very, I was able to make that. So while it was a big transition, it wasn't the most life damaging transition ever. I was quite confident about it. I was able to, move into the UK and move into health management and all of that. But I guess because I didn't have a lot of attachments, it was a lot easier than my next career transition, right? So that first career transition was major, but it was completely different when I wanted to do it again.
But then what was your main reason for wanting to do? You just knew that this was
so at the time what it was I was practicing. I was slightly frustrated with the healthcare system in Nigeria, and I felt it was very limiting in terms of what I could do with my patients. I could help them when they came in front of me, but there was just this bigger issue with the healthcare system. And in my head, I thought, okay, my best chance at fixing anything is coming at it from a completely different angle. Those were my thoughts at the time. Again, very idealistic way of thinking, but honestly, those were my thoughts.
And that was in an effort to solve, what you saw was a challenge, and it required you changing, like you said, a whole career and facing family and friends, eyebrows being raised, but something you went for. Thank you for sharing that, because I think, again, it's just important, and I don't think it's one and done. Like you said, there's more, so we'll still go back there. But at least there's a point in time where we also have to push ourselves into a transition. Emily, is there anything you want to share? And again, it was an open question, so
the only thing that comes to mind is really going back to work so early after having a baby. At the time, is a long story. I didn't actually know I was pregnant, and I left the job that I had been at. So
really?
I actually got a new, and obviously this country needs maternity pay to live. So
oh my gosh.
And then I did find a job while I was still pregnant. But obviously, I went on maternity leave shortly after. So I think ideally for me, I would have loved to be at home for the whole year. But I wasn't able to do that. And then my manager was just like, they really need me back. This is what they hired me for, blah, 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 blah.
Really?
So I went back full time, but I was working from home still, but it was still quite challenging for myself. because still haven't put Jessica Joy in nursery yet. I just feel like she just needs to be around me a bit more, a bit more. So yeah, sometimes I do feel like I actually know that I actually went back to work way too early, and by God's grace it won't be the same the next time. However, it was challenging in terms of waking up early in the morning, finishing late, doing work, doing baby, doing wife, and doing life. I feel has been quite hard, and I am happy that I've had people around me that have recognized that, and it's only recently that I've actually found my feet. And even I have a friendship group that we didn't see each other in like 2 years, and last week Saturday was like the first time that we went out. So I'm happy that the people around me are very understanding, and I've also given myself a lot of grace in this season, in terms of transitioning. I really and truly, Peter's the more, oh, we need to do this, we need to that. For me, I'm just like, we just need to relax. If it's just let's just chill, because life is just going and going and going. So I give myself a lot of grace that I'm not going to attend every birthday party. I'm not going to attend every I'm bare, if I need to rest. So that's where I am right now.
That is so key. I think the point you said at the end about giving yourself grace in periods of transition is so key, because there's so many new demands that we're navigating. We can't juggle people's expectations. Like there's some things that we have to let go of. And I think that's such a, like, coming to that awareness is so key. Navigating life transitions. Give yourself grace. Take a step back, and having friends that understand is great. I think that's another thing, right? As you go through these life changes, as Tutu, you mentioned, dynamics change. So we talked about dynamics in your marriage, but dynamics with friendships change, right? And how do friends relate with that? I think it's good to have this conversation so that people can be more cognizant of, someone's going through this life change. What does it require in the way that I'm a shop for them? I shouldn't maybe demand. It's not that time I'm like, you didn't call me. Why have you not called me? Because that's not helpful. They're going through so many demands, right? Are you going to be an understanding friend that's still going to check in and love them when they're back and available? I really want to engage the audience, right? So we've talked about a few transitions, and I am sure we have 33 people on this call, right? Wow. What are some of the life transitions that you've gone through? What have you picked up from the conversation so far? This is really the benefit of having this live, and we really want to learn from you, your experience, your knowledge, just your feedback as well. Anything you want to say to Amelia that we have on the call. Okay, so we've talked about this, and I think already I'm taking notes personally. There's so much in there that you've said already, and we talked about moving to a new career. One of the things specifically in navigating transition is fear, because again, we talked about the positive ones with maybe childhood. Maybe with motherhood there is some fear around, am I ready to have another child, or to even have it, some people can get stuck in that. Or am I ready for this new role at work, or this position? Am I ready for whatever it is? And usually that fear is like a key blocker. So Tutu, I'm going to come back to you again, because you mentioned you had a second career change. And I'd love to walk through, right, how did you navigate any kind of doubts or uncertainty about moving into this new transition phase? How did you overcome that?
So this one was a long process. This one was the change that it took a while to come to the point. As a matter of fact, I had been praying about it for a long time. I had, sort of been thinking about how I changed my life, because this is what I knew. But also I went through coaching on this one.
You went through
coaching.
Okay.
On this one. I was actually coached out of my job. Yeah. Oh, wow. And also, I had a health challenge that then was the final, you got to go. Right. So I've been in the NHS almost 10 years. I was quite senior as well. Nobody was chasing me, nothing was, but when you come to the end of a season, you know you're at the end of the season. You know that this is it. But if it's a comfortable place, if it's a place that you, like I said, I've been there for almost 10 years. I'd risen quite quickly and quite significantly. And so it was just not going to be the easy. Plus, now I've got a husband to consult with. I have got children that are depending on me. So even financially, you have to weigh it properly. I remember a few things actually that helped. Like I said, it was a long one. It was something I was praying about. I remember I was journaling quite a lot and asking God for clarity. I remember that I had an alarm on my phone for 11 a.m. every day, and the tag was clarity. So regardless of where I was, at 11 a.m. when the alarm went off, I would say a prayer and say, God, I need to understand. I need clarity. And that went on and God gave me a word as well, and I held on to it. But it was that final get out that was the challenge. I remember that at the time I then had long COVID, which was just it became, for me, was a big, I mean, it was like being told all of a sudden you have a chronic illness that you've got to live with kind of thing. So that was quite challenging, because there were days I would wake up in the morning and I would have to text my boss that today's not happening. I can't do today. I can't get up from bed, kind of thing. And that was a big thing for me. That's not me. I'm not that person, you know. And so I really started to struggle with that. To be honest with you, they were not giving me issues at work at all. It was just in my head. I thought, no, I can't keep doing this. And so I started to think of a career break. I started to think of the fact that I wanted to come out of my job and take a break, which I've never done before in my life. So even when I remember when I eventually resigned, my boss kind of said, so what are you going on today? I was like, nothing. I'm just going on a career break. But like I said, I then got into this leadership coaching thing quite by, probably no coincidence, by Godcidence, I think. And I had 3 coaching sessions with this woman. By the third one, it was a case of, you need to go and resign. Sure.
Wow.
And at this time as well, I was thinking to myself, I had a business on the side that I'd started baking at the time. And I thought to myself, I need to recover. So in my head, I had it planned out. All right. I remember reading this lady's book, Michelle Obama's book, Becoming, and there was a part she'd mentioned, she was going through a similar thing, and she'd mentioned how to plan financially for it. If anyone hasn't read it, was the idea of, you figure out what your essentials are every month, right? And depending on how long you think it will take you to bounce back, before you leave your job, you then save up for, I think, 3 to 6 months kind of thing. And because I thought I would do a 3 months career break, I'd kind of saved. So I planned for this one. I actually did prepare for it. And then I think the long COVID was the final straw, really. I just thought, you know what, I'll do it. I need to do this at this point. And then there was my husband. So my husband had also done that. He was fully into business by this point. He didn't have a 9-to-5. So I knew that it was going to be quite a difficult conversation to have. Of course, he was aware of the journey, and then when I said to him, I think I want to do it now, he was like, okay, think about this. And I cannot forget, and I don't know who needs to say, I cannot forget thinking, I can blackmail this guy and be like, when you were doing your own,
I was here.
And I cannot forget the Holy Spirit giving me a check. And so I kept my mouth shut. And a few days later, he just said, you know what, go and do it. Go and drop your resignation. And I did. And so that was it. But the change in dynamics for me, like I said, I had planned it, but the Bible says that many are plans in a man's heart, but it's God that actually directs ways. Now looking back, I realized I needed to do that at the time. It was a kairos moment for me. I needed to get out of that career at that time because of the next transition that then happened. And that one was not planned for.
And that's so powerful. I can relate also, I can relate with this part of your journey about being called to something, and you're like, there's all these factors. And so particularly, we're a Christian community, the part about praying for clarity, I think as we head into those proactive transitions, it's so key. And clarity, as you said, one verse, as I've navigated or been navigating also like a what's next journey, has been the verse around, you will enlighten my darkness, and that just praying that God brings his light. And obviously for you, like you said, it was coincidence, but you had this coaching program that really accelerated that. And obviously the Holy Spirit helped you with the conversation with your husband, because obviously as a married person, you can't just up and do life transition. So that's also a tip for leaning into the Holy Spirit when you have to bring key stakeholders. Again, might not just be your husband. If you're younger, it can be your parents, they have to sponsor something, or even your work, your manager, whatever the thing may be. I mean, I don't know if you had anything to add to that, or any,
I think as Auntie was speaking, what came to my mind was it's so important to marry your friend. Like, in this whole journey, I would say that Peter has been my rock through it all. When I left my job, going back to work early, like, he's someone that I would just wake up in the middle of the night and be like, okay, can you go and sort her out, sort of thing. So it's so important. Like, imagine if Uncle had turned around and was like, oh no, you can't do this right now, we have things ahead. Like, it's just so important. As much as they are the head, but we also have our own vision, we also have our own journey to take. So it's so important to all the young girls who are actually on the call. It's so important to marry your friend, honestly, someone who's understanding, who acknowledge you. Thank you so much.
Oh, speaking of the friends, and then he shut up in the back.
Dying in this office, I need this water, so I was just messaging him. But it's just so important. Someone who is understanding, someone who always have your corner, no matter what it is. Like, God forbid if the journey that Auntie took on was not successful, you don't want someone to be like, oh, imagine, and I told you not to go ahead with this. Do you understand? But someone who's going to support you through the trials, through the negative things, because in marriage and life in general, not everything is smooth sailing. We've had financial up and downs already, and we're like only in year 3. So for us, we're in this together for the long haul. I had my own scripture going into marriage, and Peter received his own word. So for us, I know that I didn't make a wrong decision, if that makes sense. I know that I know for myself that this is a journey that is not just a 5-year journey, if that makes sense. This is forever and ever and ever. That was just one thing, just sidetracking. But in terms of navigating life situations and circumstances, I will always say my number one anchor is going back to God. Most of the people know in choir that I'm currently not happy in my current role at the moment, and I've literally told everybody that in your quiet time, I've even given them my boss's name. Pray.
That's a strategy, if anyone.
Nobody can come and stress me in this life. Nobody. So I'm telling them to pray. So again, I would always speak on having your community, having people that you can just call on, and also having your own personal relationship with God. I feel like in the times where I really, really needed God, I've literally just gone on my knees and he's answered. He's someone that is always there. He actually wants you to speak to him. So in the times of making life decisions, as Auntie said, she had an alarm. I've currently got an alarm on my phone myself at this point in time, because I want something and I need something, and I won't stop till I get that breakthrough. The Bible says that we should ask, we should seek, and we should knock, and the door shall surely open unto us. How will it open? We have to keep knocking, we have to keep seeking. He will definitely open the door. And I am a big believer that his word never fails. It never drops on soil, on bad soil. It will always grow, it will always germinate in my heart and in my mind. So I have to keep that faith. So that's the only things I wanted to add.
So powerful, I think. I mean, again, like buttressing to this point there on the power of prayer, to one, for clarity, again, we're praying about breakthrough, breaking out. There is a force that's required. So again, this is just to highlight that some transitions need that force. And I think so we definitely touched on prayer. So having that relationship with God, crying out to him, like it works. And like that's just, we have some testimonies here that you guys have shared and you that are walking through it. So if you need to give people the name of your boss or the name of your whatever challenge, feel free to take that. And then also something I think to mention, it's also the practical side of planning, right? Because it's a big change, financially having a 3-month career break doesn't just like, the fear in your head is, what if it all goes belly up and your family are struggling, you don't get another job, the next thing your venture, it fails, God forbid. But you plan, at least you applied, you've done some research, we call it research, learning, right? Reading books, seeking alternative opinions. So I think that's another key thing as we're praying and we're seeking for a transition to a higher level, right? A desired breakthrough, is what are the practical steps that we need to take? Where are the places that we need to get information and resource from? And there's people all around us in this community, that we can call on. You'd be surprised how willing people will be to offer their time. So, no one should feel like I have no one to talk to. Again, this is just calling out to you. If you feel like I don't really have a tribe, just reach out. Just do not go through that period on yourself. Ask people to pray with you, ask people for advice. I think that's the key thing going through transition. I'm going to go back to, again, if there's any questions for the panelists, please drop them in. I'm still waiting for some commentary from our people. We need to learn from you. But in the absence of that, also please share your questions in the chat if you have any questions for Tutu or Amelia about what they shared or anything else. So one that I'm going to touch on is, you mentioned this at the start of the call before we had everyone on Tutu, right? About a transition you've had to navigate that wasn't so positive, and probably also entailed some of the things that we've had to deal. We've mentioned, as ways of dealing through that. But again, just broadly, because there's financial challenges where maybe you have to downscale. That's a period of transition. If you're going through that, there's health challenges, which again changes dynamics, and people have to deal with through a season of leaning more heavily on God. There's also loss of a loved one, which I know Tutu, you have some experience with, right? Navigating that, and also alluding to a bigger change, I'm assuming, I don't know, but I'd love to hear maybe how, you have been navigating through that transition of losing a loved one, right, in your life, and what life change did that require from you?
Okay. I was on mute there. Thanks, Dami. So I'm just going to continue the story from where I stopped. So I leave my job at the end of 2021, at the end of December 2021, and I'm like, oh, let's do this career break thing. And my dad is really ill at this point, but because I wasn't doing much, right? I was able to help with him. So I used to go in, take him to appointments and all of that. And I'm forever grateful for that period. Because if I was at work, I wouldn't be able to do that. And then he passed on. And this is where my life changed again, because apart from dealing with the grief, thankfully, my family is quite a closely knit family. So we kind of supported each other and all of that. But what then happened was I had to step in and manage his business literally the next day after he passed. And that was the big change in dynamic again for me. So don't forget, I have my own businesses that I'm running. At this point, I'm running them at my own pace because, again, I'm taking this career break to recover, right? And then this one comes up. So that was the job I hadn't planned for. However, God did say to me, well, you said you were going to take a 3-month break and then get a contract role. Kind of same thing. But the point was, God had that all planned out. So it came as a surprise to me, but it didn't come as a surprise to God. And I think I want to make that point, that even with life transitions that we didn't plan for, it comes as a surprise to us, but it doesn't come as a surprise to God. And so there's no better time to lean into God, because he's clearly seen it. He knows exactly how that plays out. So that I just wanted to mention that at that point. And so I take up this role, managing the pharmacy, and I cannot forget the pharmacy in Stratford. I cannot forget that one day I was walking. I did a lot of because I didn't have a commute before this time, right? And suddenly I had a commute. So I would take the train to London every a few days a week. And I have to say that on that commute, the great thing about being in a train is that you're with a lot of people, but you're on your own. And that those commutes where I look back, they were my therapy. Because I would think, I would pray, I would cry, and like I said, you are with many people, but you're on your own. So it was such, and I cannot forget on one of those commutes, I said to God, I said, do I throw away my own vision, my own dream, because I want to maintain my father's legacy? And he said, no, you don't. You do it all. And I can't, and don't forget, I'm dealing with long COVID at this time. So physically, my strength is also not what I used to have. And so I'm thinking, okay, we do it all. How? How are we doing this all? Yeah. And so I don't think there's ever been a period where I realized it wasn't about my physical strength. It wasn't about how smart I was, how superwoman I was. I was going to need God's grace to pull through. Yeah. And we're still navigating that.
Yeah. Well, the verse that comes to mind is like, his strength is made perfect in our weakness, right? I think we do have to have those moments of vulnerability, things that catch us by surprise, so that we lean more heavily on God. And those transitions are tough, right? Your strength was not the same. You're dealing with, the loss of your dad, navigating a new terrain, taking up his business. There's like so many things in that. But I'm glad that you've been able to push through. And you're still going through that, and God is helping you. So thank you for sharing that with us, right? I think
I just wanted to add, so sorry, Dami, when Auntie was speaking about it might be a shock to us, but it's not a shock to God. And I think in my current moment, I needed that word, because I feel like I made the decision to leave my job, and till today I'm just like, why did I do that? So basically, but cut long story short, I left my job for a new job for a smaller company. On the second day of the employment, they actually ended my probation, and then I found out I was pregnant. So for me, it's always like, oh my gosh, why did I make this decision to leave this job, if that makes sense? But I feel like what Auntie said, it could be a shock to us, but it's definitely not a shock to God. So for anyone who needed a word today, take that away. If you don't know anything in terms of managing your transition, if it's a shock, whether it's not a shock or not, but yeah, take that. It may be a shock to us, but it's not a shock to God.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amelia, for pulling that out and sharing your personal story of that. Yeah, personal journey. I think it's so comforting. We will still go through many life transitions, some that we would actively break into, because they're positive things, new job, new promotion, new level, whether in relationship, but there's some that will happen and we have to navigate. But we can always rely and lean on the Holy Spirit and know that He is in control of our lives. He's in control of the world. So nothing will ever catch Him by surprise. And I think that's a key thing to just have as a mindset. There's so many things I picked up. Again, I'm just going to call on everyone in the chats. Can you just share? We're in the final couple of minutes. I don't see any questions, but I do want to hear from you what you have picked up so far from the conversation. There's so much in there, right? One, community, we talked about. One, accepting the reality of your new face, depending on the kind of transition that happens. Giving yourself grace. There's so many. So I'm just, before I call them out and give you guys expo, I'm gonna wait to hear from you. And then while we're doing that, I'm just gonna again put it back to to you both in terms of any final words you have. I mean, we've said a lot, but is there any final words you have as you continue your life journey, right, and continue to navigate your season of, whatever that is, whether it's motherhood or stage in your career, business? Emilia, you talked about going back to baking, which we didn't really get into, but if there's anything, your final comments, I'd love to hear on that as well.
Yeah, sure. I think what I was going to say in terms of closing out was, I think JJ was about 2 months old, and I couldn't get her to sleep, so I took her downstairs, and I literally had white noise in the background. If you don't know, white noise is like a noise that makes baby sleep. And she was just in my arms, and I was walking up and down. I was like, do you know what? Let me just use this time to pray. So one thing I would say in my transition is I've definitely got closer to God. Late in the midnight hour, I am the one who is awake. Whether JJ is awake or not, I will be walking up and down. And I feel like I've gone back to my first love, if that makes sense. Because I feel like with marriage, not that I forgot God, but I was just like so consumed with marriage and, trying to be a good wife, if that makes sense. But in this time of with JJ at night time, me walking up and down, I've literally, so there was a night specifically I was walking up and down, and I feel like I hadn't really connected with her yet, but I was telling God, I will never forget, I was crying, and I was telling God, Lord, please don't let her miss it. Like, when I am gone, don't allow her to encounter bad friends, that she must make heaven. And I was like, Lord, oh my gosh, this is the love that you have for me. And I was telling God, like, make sure. And I was praying. And I think just in terms of transitioning, it's prayer that has helped me. It's his word that has helped me. It's my community as well. Him giving me a community, him giving me TC has been amazing. The people who are there. So I do personally believe that having God by my side has been a game changer, honestly, and has helped me push me through things that I think I would find difficult has been easy. So that's my encouragement to someone today, that get God, like, wholeheartedly, honestly, just pour everything into him, and he will definitely pour into you. So that's my closing.
Thank you, yeah. Over to you, Tutu, as well, for your final comments.
2 things quickly. One, I'm going to touch on the point that Emilia just made. It was lovely that you've mentioned that, your transition got you closer to God. I was just going to add, that just dropped in my spirit, that sometimes transitions threaten our walk with God if we're not careful. And so you need to be conscious of that. That in all of this, God is your constant, really. And so you've got, and especially with when your dynamics are changing, you need to be conscious that can start to affect your prayer life and all of that. And so it's just lovely to hear Emilia talk about how, because she was waking up at night, she was able to pray. That's amazing. The second thing I was going to say is that I think it's Romans, what's that verse now? Romans 8, I think, verse 28, that says, we know that all things work together for good. Everything. The Bible doesn't make exceptions. And so the reason I'm saying this verse is that there are people who either they think, I'm about to do this, what if it's a mistake? What if it's not God that said I should do it? Or I've done this, what if I was just going out on my own? God has a way of rerouting us. If we are being genuine and we are leaning on him and saying, God, I've done this, so how are we doing it? All things work together for your good. Everything, your achievements, your mistakes, your successes, your experiences, or everything, all things work together for your good.
I mean, there is nothing more to say, and I love that so much, ending on that note. I truly believe that analogy you said, it's like the GPS. Even if you do make a wrong turn, the Holy Spirit, as you keep, pressing into him, he will guide you and make sure that you go back on the right track. So engagements, you guys didn't give me much to work with. I don't know if it's technical, maybe it's global IT, maybe it's CrowdStrike that not to, but it's been such an enriching conversation. I've learned so much, honestly. Again, tips that I'm going to take as I continue my transition. So thank you so much for sharing, right, from your heart and allowing God to speak through you, because that's what's happened. And I know all the people in here have also been blessed. So thank you. And we're top of the hour now, so we usually have an hour. Always wish the conversation could go longer. But it's, we're conscious of your Sunday evening, so we'll give the time back. But yeah, as I said, thank you. Thank you for everyone that's joined in. Really, again, I don't know if this is a technical. Okay, someone says, Mrs. A, we have been very blessed, loved it. Okay, great, thank you. There's no technical no technical issues. But I am gonna hand over to Sister Yemi
I'm
to
here.
round us off for this
Thank you
session.
so much, Dami. You have been fabulous as usual. Thank you. And to the panelists, I've learned so much from you. My transition, I'm sure we all have different transitions. My first transition was a life blow. I was 29 and lost my mom. So that was a big transition for me. That was the first, that was the big first one. And then another transition I also went through is in 2 years, I got a promotion, 2 different promotions to the head of department. So that was hard, coming from someone in the department to the head. So that was another transition, because obviously you get people, team members that will be thinking, oh, she's my colleague a minute ago. Now she's the head.
Yeah.
So that's what you'd have to manage that. And last thing I know that I managed, that I picked up on one of what one of you said, was friendship. And in the last 10 years, from the time I clocked 40, I realized they're friends and they're acquaintances. And you need to know the difference between a friend and an acquaintance. I don't shy away from using the word acquaintance, because I know a lot of people shy away from using that word. I say, she's my friend. Do you know where they live? Do you know my child's name? Do you know what school they go? Do you know what I do? So that's when you know that they're acquaintances and they're friends. So thank you so much. You all had different, insights that you brought, and I was really blessed. You caught my attention throughout from beginning to end. I looked at the time and it was already 5 minutes to 5. So I was like, wow, I didn't know time had gone. So thank you so much to the panelists. Thank you to the fabulous Dami, who's always doing a wonderful job. So we'll please need you to come back again this time next month, and we'll be here with another fantastic session again. So thank you all for joining, and we hope to see you again next month. Thank you, Dami. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the technical team behind the scenes.
Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Thank you. Have a lovely Sunday. Nice sunny Sunday.
Thank you so much for joining. See you next month.
See you next month. Bye. Bye.